I wanted to start by asking you about aggressive behavior. Is there an age at which time parents can start picking up certain trends or certain behaviors that maybe not be developmentally appropriate?
What research indicates is that between the ages of 3 and 4, if the child is showing aggressive behavior, physically hitting someone or snatching toys away from a child and things like that, and this is recurring across the board, whether the school is calling you and letting you know that your child has been aggressive at school, whether it is that you continue to see this in the playground, he's hitting or taking things away without asking on the playground, whether he's being aggressive at home. That would be worrisome.
Is it difficult to pick up? Because certainly kids play, and some kids play harder than others. So is it difficult at first to pick up something that might become a trend?
Scientists do agree that it is when aggressive behavior is displayed across the board, across all these areas, at school, at home, and in any other place where the child plays.
What is the concern when you're talking about a school setting or a larger setting, a community setting, when you have this kind of behavior?
What research suggests is that the concern is for the child and obviously for those around him. For the child, when aggressive behavior and the child is not able to self-control at this point, it could lead to other chronic aggressive behaviors, and if it's not curbed within time, it could also lead to bullying behaviors. But it is very important to understand that in the early age, as young as 17 months of age, aggression starts. It starts, but it doesn't mean that this aggressive behavior is not normal. This aggressive behavior at 17 months of age is typical. This is the time when the child is learning that he is, or asserting himself, asserting his independence, and so the child is displaying some of this aggressive behavior because he may not have the idea of how to express himself or ask for something.
If parents, a good way to remember might be a rule of 3 C's.
Yeah.
For them to turn to. Can you talk to those a little bit?
There are 3 C's that I would tell parents to use. Compassionate parenting, parenting that has consideration for the child, and also that this parenting is consistent. For example, if a child is taking away a toy from another friend, and the mom reacts or responds to the child, I really see that you want that toy. At the same time, I see that you're very angry because you can't have it. So in that situation, the parent is not only being considerate of the fact that he wants the toy, but also compassionate to the feelings that he's feeling at the same time. And the consistency on these 3 C's means that the parent responds in this way consistently across the board.
Of the 3 C's, which is the most important, or do they all work together?
I would say they all work together, yes.
We had also, in the beginning, talked about the fact that parents shouldn't automatically become alarmed. Some of this behavior is perfectly appropriate and doesn't indicate any problems. And can you speak to that a little bit for me?
What we consistently see in research is if the aggressive behavior is seen across the board, then that raises a red flag, meaning that if the parent gets a phone call on a regular basis from the school saying that the child was aggressive, if the parent also sees aggressive behavior on the playground, if the parent sees aggressive behavior at home with the siblings, that would be something that's worrisome and raise some flags. There is a difference between appropriate behaviors and what I would call behaviors that are raising a flag. The appropriate behaviors, I would say, a child who is playing and running around with a lightsaber or with a toy gun, that doesn't necessarily mean that this child is going to grow up to be aggressive. What we are looking for is aggressive behavior across the board that is consistent and that at this point it's become chronic.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the research and the methods that this is based upon?
There's been numerous studies, I would say since the 1980s, that this has been paid attention, and it's in the social and emotional field. And there are different studies that look at a large number of children, and they observe them in either on the playground, or they observe them in the classroom, and the observers are the ones who are basically observing these behaviors, the aggressive behavior. At the same time, researchers go to teachers and ask them to rate the aggressive behaviors of the children, and also of parents.
Were there any findings, anything consistent with those studies that you're able to tell us?
Absolutely. What those studies have found is that there are some aggressive behaviors that may need some intervention. Some of the examples that I can give you is, again, the chronic aggressive behavior that occurs across the board, and at the same time, if the child is not showing self-control in other situations.
Could you give us some examples of when that might be?
So for example, at school, the child who can't wait for his turn, the child who is in the playground who pushes everybody away so that he can be the first one on the slide, or the child at home who just screams and shouts because he's not getting what he wants.
How difficult is it to correct these behaviors? It sounds like these are something that parents can be a role model, can step in, and I'm wondering if you could talk to that a little bit. I mean, you talked about the compassion and consideration and being consistent, but is it a difficult thing to do?
No, not at all. What research suggests is that across the board, parenting does matter. The parenting behaviors that, for example, going back to the 3 C's, that's compassionate. The parenting that is consistent. The parenting that is considerate also of the child. And at the same time, parenting that shows empathy. So say, for instance, if a child falls and hurts himself, a parent can say, oh, I'm so sorry that you fell. I can see that hurts. So the parent is not only modeling the behavior, but also guiding the child with the 3 C's that I spoke about.
When the parent exhibits that behavior with the child, what's the next step? Does the child go on and then model that behavior?
That's what scientists have seen, that when parents model the behavior, when they are sympathetic to the children's feelings, and not only to the children, but also others around, then children are more likely to learn those behaviors.
If you had one takeaway, one thing that you'd really like parents to get from this report, what would that be?
Over and over, research has shown that it is the warm parenting, the parenting that is sensitive, that responds to the child's needs and wants, in a place where there's also limit setting. For example, if a child wants something from the store, but the parent is not wanting to get it, then the parent can respond, I know you really want that chocolate today. I know you do. Unfortunately today we cannot get the chocolate. Perhaps next time, because I know how much it means to you. That is being empathetic to the feelings, that's being considerate to what he wants, and also showing respect for the child.
So it is a matter of parenting style.
It's a matter of parenting style, absolutely.
And then Selma, I did want to ask you again, on the flip side, because we do have a lot of kids who are behaving as they should in these situations. So what are some of those behaviors that are acceptable at this age?
What research has shown is that as children age and they begin to get self-control, then they can show some behaviors that one would say are socially competent, meaning that they are friendly with their peers. When a peer falls, the child comes and says, oh, are you okay? Or when the child is able to readily share a toy that is popular. So those are the kinds of behaviors that one would say are socially competent.
Selma, is there an age when that starts to develop, or is it all different?
I would say it's individual by child, but I would expect to see it between the ages of 3 and 4. Again, with development of self-control.
You had mentioned starting right from the time they're born. Parents can take steps to help children have this positive behavior,
Yeah.
the empathy and some of the other behaviors you mentioned.
Yeah,
What is it that they can do?
there are various things that parents can do since the children are basically born. They can talk to their children. The more language they give them, the more ability they're going to have, children will have to express themselves. They can implement the 3 C's that we just talked about, like the consideration, the compassion, and the consistency in their parenting. And at the same time, also know that some aggressive behaviors are going to be typical, because children in the early ages, they are acquiring this independence from their parents. They're asserting their independence, and they know they're becoming aware of what they want, how they feel, and so they want to assert themselves. But sometimes children do not have the language, and when parents direct their language and say, I know, Johnny, you feel very angry because you want this. And so the child begins to learn not only that there's language, something that you can say to represent your feeling, but at the same time, the parent is modeling the behavior of, yes, you can use those words, you can say that. And so the child becomes more aware of their feelings, and the child becomes more able to express their feelings, and that promotes self-control.
What are the implications from this research? Where do you go from here?
The implication for this research is that parents are very important in children's lives. Parents are the first teachers of children, and that you don't have to wait until problems, if you will, arise. You can start at a very early age.
You had mentioned the talking to them, the language. In your mind, is that one of the key components because it gives them the ability to communicate?
Yeah, there's a lot of research out there that links both language and the ability to control your emotions, because language gives you an outlet of expressing your emotions. When a child does not have that ability to express verbally what he feels or wants, then he becomes frustrated and resorts to physical aggression.
As a parent, should you be concerned if they're running around with lightsabers? Does it indicate normal behavior, or what does it indicate according to your research?
What research would say about that is that that's normal behavior. That's typical behavior of the child playing. We have to take a look at the age of the child. If we are talking about a 4-year-old or 5-year-old that's using the lightsaber to hit someone, then that would be but see, that's not good.
What is normal behavior the parent should not be concerned about?
What research suggests is that aggressive behavior can be seen as young as 17 months of age, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is aggression. It doesn't mean that this child is going to grow up to be aggressive. What research suggests is that parents can intervene at this point. They can help the child get the self-control that they need in order to develop socially competent behaviors, the behaviors that I told you a little while ago, which is being able to share a popular toy, which is feeling empathy for a child when a child falls and hurts himself and saying, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Are you okay?